Chapter 15. The Cedar Chip Sea. Boom and Winger parted ways at the Winginghams, and Boom hurried up Prosperity Street to Mr. Jorgensen's cottage, painted minty melon. A matching minty garage stood at the end of the paved driveway, and a long canvas tent engulfed the side yard. Mr. Jorgensen's garage smelled like cedar shavings, and rightly so, for cedar shavings covered the cement floor. Thin curly cues of golden wood lay everywhere. As Boom entered, he kicked his way through the knee-deep litter and stubbed his toe on something hard. Kicking is what got you into trouble in the first place, Mr. Jorgensen pointed out. He reached into the shavings where Boom's foot throbbed and pulled up a Viking helmet, just like the one Halvor wore. The retired police chief put the helmet on a counter, then looked at Boom as if he were looking at some sort of troublemaker. Boom wasn't a troublemaker in the same way a cookie maker made cookies or a candlestick maker made candles. He never actually tried to make trouble. Boom put his hands into his jean pockets. "You want me to sweep?" he asked. He figured he could sweep all the shavings in under an hour and get right back to the merbaby situation. "Sweeping's too easy," Mr. Jorgensen declared. He pulled a wagon from the corner, the red kind that kids ride in. It was rusty and filled with nails, screws, and bolts. He placed 4 empty buckets beside the wagon. The shavings reached to their rims. "You will fill each bucket with a different sized screw. In this first bucket you will put 1/2-inch screws. In the second bucket you will put 3/4-inch screws. In the third bucket you will put 5/8-inch screws. And in the last bucket you will put 1-inch screws. Any questions?" What the heck was he talking about? Boom didn't know how to tell what size a screw was. He picked one out of the huge pile. It looked like all the others. "What about nails?" he asked. Mr. Jorgensen folded his arms. "What do you mean, what about nails? Did I say anything about nails? No. I only said screws. 1/2-inch screws, 3/4-inch screws, 5/8-inch screws, and 1-inch screws. In my day, boys didn't ask questions. In my day, boys respected authority. Now get to work and I'll come back and check on you." It was the biggest pile of screws, nails, and bolts that Boom had ever seen. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "I'm going to have some money in a few days. I'm really sorry about breaking your window, but I was wondering if I might just pay for it." "Money?" Mr. Jorgensen scowled. "You steal something? A thief as well as a vandal?" No, of course not. The window was an accident." "Work is what teaches a boy a lesson. You're lucky they don't have labor camps anymore. In my day, there was a labor camp on every block." The shavings had worked their way inside Boom's socks and were tickling his ankles. He reached down to scratch as Mr. Jorgensen walked out onto the driveway and disappeared around the side of the garage. Boom squatted next to the wagon. What a nightmare! Was 5/8 bigger or smaller than 1/2? If Winger were here, he'd know the answer. Boom began to pick out the screws one by one and, to the best of his judgment, dropped them into the appropriate buckets. Plink, plink. The cedar shavings really itched. What was he doing this for anyway? Monotonous labor in exchange for a broken window. If he just sold that merbaby to a billionaire, then he could give Mr. Jorgensen enough money to buy 100 new windows. Mr. Jorgensen could live in a house made of nothing but stupid windows. On an ordinary weekend, sorting screws might have seemed like a necessary task, one that kept a garage tidy and a life predictable. But this was no ordinary weekend. The universe had once again proven that it wanted nothing to do with tidiness or predictability. In the same unexpected manner that had conjured up a mother-eating twister, the universe had deposited a goldfish-eating creature from a storybook into Boom's life. But maybe, just maybe, something good would come of it. Maybe the universe had had a change of heart. Plink, plunk, plink, plunk. The sound of falling screws grew louder. Plunk, plink. The sound took on a familiar tone, like a ball hitting a wall. Boom stared into one of the buckets, allowing his gaze to blur until the silver screws became a pool of silver water. The pool shuddered and the cedar shavings vibrated against Boom's legs as a roar filled the garage. It was the sound of cheering. He looked up from the bucket. The sea of shavings rolled like waves as the cheering grew louder. Boom stood and watched the garage walls expand, pressing outward to form a vast arena. Tiers of seats lined the edges, reaching so high that Boom could not see the last row. "Ladies and gentlemen," someone said over a loudspeaker. Bright lights shone from above, and the cedar shavings blew away, revealing a spotless, gleaming floor. White stripes marked the edges of the playing field. Welcome to the Boom Broom Kick the Ball Against the Wall arena. The cheering intensified, rattling Boom's molars. Tonight, the final round begins between Brazil and the Fairweather Island for the title of the Kick the Ball Against the Wall champion of the earth. Representing Fairweather, Mr. Boom Broom. A spotlight fell on Boom's face, almost blinding him. He covered his eyes as the cheering shook the entire building. Boom! Boom! The fans cried. Boom took a bow, and flowers fell at his feet. Never had he felt such joy. Never had he... "What's the matter with you?" Mr. Jorgensen's voice startled Boom, causing him to stumble and fall into the shavings. "Daydreaming, I see. In my day, if boys daydreamed, they got thumped on the head with a ruler." Mr. Jorgensen dumped a bucket of shavings into the garage. Boom scrambled to his feet. Just a daydream? His face still felt hot from the spotlight, and the roar of the crowd still echoed in his ears. "Sorry," Boom said. The shavings had reached up into his shirt and down into his underwear. He scratched his bottom, then started sorting again. Plink, plunk. This could take a month to finish. Soon he'd need to come up with an excuse and reschedule the work so that he could get back to Myrtle and the baby. Mr. Jorgensen returned 2 more times with 2 more buckets of shavings. Where were they coming from? Boom shuffled across the garage and looked out the window just as Mr. Jorgensen pulled back the edge of the huge white tent. Boom caught the sight of what appeared to be a ship's bow. Halvor had said that the newest member of the Sons of the Vikings had made himself a Viking ship. That would explain the shavings and the Viking helmet. "Boom, you have a phone call." Mrs. Jorgensen entered the garage. She was about Boom's size, and her hands were covered in fish slime. "Sorry," she said when he took the slime-covered receiver. "I've been pickling salmon all day. I don't know why these Viking descendants have to eat so much fish." "I know what you mean," Boom said, holding the receiver a few inches from his head. "Hello?" "Boom!" Myrtle cried. "I can't find the baby." End of chapter 15.